episode 239. This is a pre-recording before the Kona Piste Open. We do not know what happened. Yes, and this is after the event. I mean, if we were to try, Ben, what happened? I mean, if we're going to try at it, at least give us our
Nicholas
best.
Antela, congratulations on your win, buddy. Rooting for you.
Yeah, that's good.
And
yeah,
for
congrats.
FPO, I'm blanking on who I picked.
Kristen, maybe.
Oh, Silva. Congrats, Silva.
Oh, that's right.
Silva had a great
event. I picked Silva to win as well. Remember, this was
lots of drama coming down those final few holes.
Yeah. Josh, do we even know how much drama? I mean, it could be massive. So we're oblivious to what happened. We are recording midweek of the previous week, and the reason for that is we had a special episode lined up to reveal new PDGA rule proposals. If you're here for that, we're going to get to that in just a few. We can tease around a little bit. Probably closer to 20 minutes till we actually break it down with the PDGA. But we're going to have some interesting stuff. We all just sat and watched the Kona Piste Open. No, we didn't. This is pre-recorded, but we're going to act like we did. And this is the names we heard. I think this was pretty cool, the Pro Tour, to put this out. Let's see. The way they're now.
Nicholas Antila.
So my name is Anniken Christiansen Sten. Evelina Salonen.
Väinö Mäkelä.
Silva Saarinen.
Lykke Lorentzen.
Jesse Nieminen.
Henna Blomroos.
There you go. That was some of them. Those are the ones who are able to make it over to the U.S. side of the tour, and they got them on film saying their names and their pronunciations. I wanted to hear some others, of course, as well. But there you go.
It's always tricky because I would 100, it's silly for me to say it. I would 100% agree that's exactly how they should say their name, right? But
I know Makala.
But it's hard because sometimes I can't pronounce it exactly like them, and then so it's is it better off just to act like a ignorant American and say the name as best I can, or do I literally try to be like Anniken Christian Sten?
Yes,
which doesn't flow because it's not my natural language.
Our European
I love
friends,
hearing that.
Our
clearly,
European
I want
friends love hearing us try. They say good job for trying. I think.
Well, I kind of like hearing their accent saying our name, right? It's not bad. So I guess it's just fun knowing how they talk, right? Or how to pronounce it.
Luca Lorentzen is one of the harder sounds for me. It's not lucky. It's not like. It's Luke. It's something like that.
Likke.
Yeah. So Likke. There you go. Likke. But anyways, we're just probably heard a whole bunch of European names, and so now we're kind of playing them out, but we didn't actually hear them, so we don't have the practice. Again, this is midweek. Pre-recording. Sorry to the live every week listeners. If you're in here during this premiere release, cool, you guys still have the chat, maybe we'll jump in, but happy US Memorial Day. So that's what a lot of people are doing.
There will still be a live chat. We just can't interact with the live chat now, like you said, Matt. This will, still treat it like a normal.
It won't
show
influence the live show. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
We should have pre-populated some chats to throw up on the screen. It'd be pretty funny. Keep us going.
Yeah. Hey, Doc, how's it going?
Perfect. Todd. We could go down the whole list, right?
Allegra will be there.
Man, there's a lot. We're thinking.
Now we're gonna leave some.
All of our fan favorites. Right. We know who you are. Go Fish Dan, I think.
Fan
favorite. So there's a little bit of small talk, of course, coming into this episode. But in all seriousness, we're going to be talking tonight about PDGA rules proposals. I asked about how this would go down, and that's what it is. The PDGA is a membership organization. They obviously have boards, committees, presidents, executive leadership that works for the membership. And they've compiled these rules proposals based off of they see it as a need or a cry from the disc golfers, or maybe just from their own perspective. And so this usually gets put out on their website, and they'll make a post on social media, or maybe even send out an email that says, hey, membership, we want your feedback. This is our proposal. And when and if enough feedback comes, they may modify or tweak a little bit. But realistically, these are the rules as they think they should be. And they're being proposed. So Josh, without getting into every rule, how did they break these out? Like as in like categories of rules?
Yeah, so obviously, like you just said, one of their primary reasons is to get feedback and reactions. And so they try to summarize it because, hey, you can go read all of the rules and all of the changes, but they would acknowledge some of the clerical updates, albeit I read them. Yay. They're probably not near as exciting. So yeah, Matt, they break these into multiple categories. The ones we're going to talk about today are probably things that are major changes, which ironically does not mean PDGA major. We literally mean the word, there's some major changes. And we're going to talk about a handful of those.
I think a major change, before we move on from that, how would you describe a major change? And I think it's literally how you function during disc golf, right? So like a major change would be the size of the circle changing, or the fact that maybe you need 3, not a second, you need a third to call something. Like that would be considered major because it's an actual change to the rule, like how you play it. And so you're going to get some of those.
Right. And so whether or not we personally think they're significant, we'll debate that. Right. But they're major because they change, yes, notable parts of the way we play. And remember, in our sport, we have the rules of disc golf, right? The official rules of disc golf. And then we also have the competition manual, which governs, right, how events are played and executed. And so there's also major changes there as well. And then you classify a few, and we will actually address some of these because I think they're still interesting. Some minor changes do have some things of note, although we probably won't feel like they're quite as significant. And then you have clerical changes, which largely are edits that don't change the essence of a rule, but they clarify rules. Sometimes they adapt text, right? Things that maybe we do care about, as well as updating some of the question scenarios. And I actually think there's a few really interesting things to kind of draw out there before we're done. So we're going to talk through and, I think all in all, Matt, like if you literally count them, it's like 5, 9, 15, 21, 31, 42 like changes. We're not going through like every single item by any means. But I think we're going to cover some ones that I think our audience, because we're disc golf, like we're in the weeds, right? Disc golf nerds. I mean, I read the rules today, so we're going to talk about some of the interesting ones.
Yep. Ben is here and he's been filming for Gannon right up to this moment. Just extra content kind of stuff, Ben.
Yeah, just for his YouTube. We just filmed a 1v1 versus Kyle Klein at Kayak Point.
When's that going live?
Versus Kyle?
Gannon versus Kyle.
Oh, okay.
But it's already out at this point.
That's what I was just going to say. I'm like, yeah, it's already out. Go check it out, right?
Go check it out. So yeah, that's what I was out here. I'm literally in the parking lot of Kayaks Point. Like I'm seeing Ezra Robinson putt, Chandler Kramer, Anthony Bodanza.
We're going to introduce a new segment in the future, Ben. You just roam around.
Wait, and that might be Makala. Makala.
Oh, by the way, I know again, this is weird. We're gonna do this Inception thing a little bit tonight, but like, Josh, are you happy with your pop picks and drops?
I'm ecstatic with
probably
mine.
I'm just gonna say no.
we don't know because we can't do that review. We will be able to see it, and everyone can click on popdroplock.com and see the update, like the season leaderboard. You can see the weekly, so you can see how we actually did, because we're gonna check. So go check and see, and if you haven't already, star your friends in there, and you'll keep track of everybody that way. But I ask that because coming out of last episode, Ben was doing me a solid and said Niklas is not likely making it out there. As of today, Wednesday of last week, his social media shows him there, and so before he plays or before the event, we got the permission to change back. So I did pick Niklas. Was it a good move, show? Was it a good move? I don't know. You guys are going to have to tell us. History or the future will let me know.
And I'm sorry, fans, if you picked Niklas.
And he didn't look back. They didn't look back. That's bad.
Because he literally told me he's not making it. And then I look at his story and he's just there.
He's on an airplane.
Right, so, which I did second guess, because then it's like, is he going to be tired? Like, what's the focus level? But it is what it is.
Robert's in our green room. Robert Leonard of the PDGA. Robert, can you hear us okay? Yeah. Okay. Give me a yes or no. Okay, cool. So we've got him in the green room. I think we've teased enough what's coming down the pipe. I just asked AI to look at this whole rules revision. I'm sorry I broke the confidentiality with the PDGA there. I'm sure it's all public now. But I asked it, what is the most interesting rule from this update? Interesting being the keyword. And it gave me an answer. I'm going to ask Robert here in a minute what he thinks that answer was from AI, but let's go ahead and bring in Robert Leonard. Hey guys, want to take this moment to talk about our presenting sponsor, TitanDiscGolf.com. If you haven't checked them out yet, you're missing out. Over 35,000 disc selection with pictures of everything. Free shipping over $75. They've got special runs. You're going to want to check them out. Also, just a reminder, there are still some Easter eggs hidden. If you find a product that is the logo of our show, Staggered Stance, if you find a disc and it's the logo of our show as the product image, purchase that, provide your email at checkout, and then you're going to get returned with a gift card of equal or greater value to purchase whatever you want. So it's kind of like a buy one, get one free. Go searching. There's probably still a few left up there. Thanks, guys. Back to the show. Ben, I haven't done the do-to-do in a while.
I know you haven't. Let's go. I'm glad to hear back.
It's back. Welcome to the show,
Hey.
Robert Leonard. Oh, Paige Pierce. Sorry, that's the. We gotta
wrong
switch
name.
that out. We'll get that fixed. It's a midweek show and things are a little off. How are you doing, Robert?
Hey, I'm wonderful. I'm happy to be here for sure.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I little sad. My Carolina Hurricanes lost in the Eastern Finals last night. Hopefully, by the time everyone is listening to this on Monday, we have a 2-1 series lead, and we're about to go up 3-1. But we'll see what happens.
You're doing the same thing we did. We were just speculating how the Kona Pitch Day Open went. And we don't know. We're hopeful that our picks were good, but we just don't know. It's the future will let us know, I guess, or the history. I don't know how that works, but okay. So we have teased, okay, major rules, minor rules, clerical rules, things that would change. Okay, before we get into all of it, I am curious. We're just going to throw it out there immediately. What do you think AI answered? The most interesting rule. Just pick one. Don't go through them all. Which one is it?
I'm not really an AI guy, so I don't know if it's looking for like just word, like the most differences in the word was this and now
it's literally. I'll be honest. It literally is looking for what it would consider interesting, adding that level of interest. There's too many.
Reduction of field size. I have no idea.
Okay, reduction of field size. Let's go ahead and
Pace
pull
of
everybody.
play. Matt, my guess is pace of play.
Okay, pace of play. Okay, interesting. Ben, do you have any guesses?
That's number one on my list, anyway.
I don't know.
Okay.
Extending the time for
Yes.
unfamiliar
No.
lies.
Yes and no.
Yeah, that's
Here's
part
what
of
it
the
is.
pace of play.
Now
Not
everyone's
what
like, whoa, these are all going to be talking points tonight. Yes, they will be. And more. It said 2 time extensions per round for majors and elites, MPO, FPO. It thinks that is it. It says from
There you
both
go.
a
That's
gameplay.
That's what I said.
No, you said there's another extension we're going to talk about, but for both a
Okay. I
gameplay
didn't know there was a
and
difference.
strategic standpoint, it says that it's interesting. It thinks it adds a strategic element to the game. We're going to talk about that and many others. Robert, explain to us, because we already kind of did. This is a rules proposal. The PDGA is a membership organization. The staff, the board, the president, the directors, everyone involved in this is made these rules and compiled them to say, here's what we're proposing, and now the membership gets a feedback period. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's important to take a minute to kind of explain the A to Z process here, right? Because I really want to be very clear about this. There are going to be some rules that are changing or being proposed to change that are going to look extremely reactionary, right? Like, oh, I bet they're changing this rule because we know this incident happened on tour. And while those rules might be applicable to those situations, this process started, 7, 8, 9 months ago. So it is purely coincidental in those situations. We have a committee, the Rules, Regulations, and Advisory Committee. We call it RRAC. And what that is a committee made up of Mike Krapika is the chair. I'm what we call the staff liaison, which basically means one of my roles on staff is to manage this committee. And then we have, and I'm the only non-voting member of this committee. We have PDGA staff that are voting members, which is why I wanted to make that clarification, and very experienced PDGA members. And that can be high-level tournament directors, local tournament directors. We even have a guy who doesn't run tournaments, but plays a ton of tournaments, because it's really good to get that perspective. And staff, these members, member feedback. Sometimes it's our event support team gets a question and we're like, man, we've never thought of that. We just throw these ideas into that group. The group just kind of has a very black and white vote. Is that this is a concept worth exploring? And if it is, then the committee just debates it and says, yeah, we need to move this forward. And if the committee agrees to move it forward, it goes to myself and Mike Sullivan in our policy and compliance department. And then if we approve of it, then we write it up and then send it back to the committee. And then if we like it, then we put it on a list, and then our staff and Disc Golf Pro Tour. And, if there's an applicable committee, right? So like when we made the change about mirrored women's divisions, we want our women's committee, our diversity committee, our senior committee, right? Like they need to see this. So we get all that applicable feedback. Disc Golf Pro Tour is heavily involved in that. And then we have edits. And then we come up with where we're at now, which is where we release these publicly and go to our members and say, hey, give us feedback. And then once we compile that feedback, then we make another round of edits sometimes, and then we make the official changes in the fall.
All right. No, that's pretty good setup right there. And I think it's important, like you said, to set that foundation. And we appreciate very much that the PDGA is trying to I don't know the right word. Josh, you'd probably be a little bit more eloquent with this. Not transparency, involved, forward thinking, getting it into the people's hands in a discussion manner, I guess. I don't know. Again, not the right way. Josh, you and I were talking about this and you thought positively.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, saying, yeah, like being more engaged. I mean, actually, for the last few years, I think, Robert, like I've seen that the cycle's been much more clear. There's been prior years where things kind of eked in under the line, but like I love the approach of putting it out there, giving time, taking feedbacks, the whole process you just articulated, and then engaging in media outlets, making it available, allowing like thorough discussion, which means you're going to get both agreements and disagreements. And I'm sure we'll even have some of that on this show, right? Yeah, I think it's healthy for the sport and healthy for the PDGA and the rules. So yeah, like I love it.
All right. Without further oh, and by the way, the PDGA, we already mentioned this last week. They are doing this with a few other podcasts as well. I didn't want to last week spill the beans, if you will. That's their own thing to decide how and when they want to announce that. But they're reaching out and trying to get involved in the community in this way. Very cool. All right.
Yeah, and obviously this is going to be going live on Monday.
It is Monday.
And so this yeah, of course. Hurricanes are getting ready to go up 3-1. Wednesday, the 28th, this upcoming Wednesday, is when we will release all of these publicly, which will include everything and how to comment and how to submit that feedback. And I doubt we will go through all 20, 30, 50, whatever numbers there is, because, a large number of these are always clerical, like, man, we really should use must instead of may here, just little simple things. So I do encourage all of our members to head to pdj.com on Wednesday to check those out. Take some time. Feedback does matter. We received substantial feedback last year on a rule and it didn't pass because of that feedback. So it's not a useless arbitrary process.
Absolutely. All right. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the proposed rule changes. Drumroll, please. No, this is something else.
Idea of what y'all are going to ask. Y'all just bring up and let's go.
Perfect. All right. We got major changes. We're going to start at the top here, and we'll kind of just navigate our way through them and see how the discussion kind of moves there. But let's start out with rule number 1 as it's proposed. Major changes, official rules of disc golf. There are 5 of these. The first one in 801.02, enforcement. This is interesting, Robert. I've been a part of the sport for a long time. This has always been the way it's been. No longer. You ready? Thrower, no longer votes on determinations. So I'm not going to read the paragraph here, but the short and sweet is a determining call. Is it inbounds? Is it out of bounds? Was that a foot fault? You can't be a part of that anymore. There's no vote from you.
Yeah. Well,
would that be true for a foot fault?
No, that's not a determination. That's a violation.
So
a
you can still call
determination
yourself.
is yes. A determination is something that we would loosely call a group decision, group call, right? Like you said, is this disc out of bounds? Is this inbounds? Did I clear this area to take my drop over there? Did I make the man know? Things like that are group determinations. And we are removing the thrower's input on that. And we really started thinking about it. And this was mostly because the benefit of the doubt rule it is a tiebreaker. It is not it's close, sure, whatever, right? And that was so widely misunderstood that we just thought it was time to make this massive shift. And, the thrower will get a vote if there is a tie, right? So in your local events, threesomes and fivesomes, you can have ties in those votes. But, your most common play is foursomes, and that's obviously where our majors and tournaments are, and it's going to be the other 3 members of the group making that determination.
And so if there is a tie, you just mentioned it, then the player's vote does count to break the tie. Right. And in this rule, if I'm not mistaken, I might be jumping around here, abstaining from a vote in any situation where a vote is required is now a courtesy violation. So, hey, man, you have to vote. Now, so my follow-up to that, Robert, and prior to the show recording, I was talking to Josh about this, and it may seem very obvious, but with a requirement to vote or else a courtesy violation, I'm required to vote with what options? Is there select options like in or out or what are my options? Because I was talking to Josh, and maybe this is a very strong hypothetical. People are used to it by now with me. But what if my vote is I'm voting and I am choosing to vote, but I'm choosing that it's too close to call. That's my vote. I'm voting it's too close to call. Is there like a definition of voting?
Well, that's not abstain, right? Abstaining is like, I ain't voting.
I would argue that I am voting that it's too close to call. They say, what's
your
vote?
vote?
Yeah, Robert's agreeing with you.
We're agreeing.
Okay.
Right. So the main thing here is that I think the most common outcome that is going to come from this is like, I didn't see the shot. Hey, did I pass a minute?
Sure.
I wasn't watching. That's already covered in the rules, right? Failure to watch your other card mates is also a courtesy violation. So that's why it's not mentioned here, because in theory, if somebody says, I wasn't watching, you can be able to say that's a courtesy violation. That is the correct call in that situation. So that is why that is there. Hang on just a second here.
I'm going to go to 3 up. You're good. We'll wait till you're ready. But my question, Josh, and I think Ben, it's not so much I didn't even see it. It's that and I don't want to bring up the Waco, Adam Hammonds.
Yeah,
thing,
we should. should.
Right, but I'm actually talking, because that one people would argue, it was obvious. But I'm saying I want to talk about where I'm literally looking at it with my eyes. I literally am saying it can't be determined. Am I going to be called on a courtesy violation is what I'm asking. And if they're saying, no, you have to vote, yes or no, then I would say, okay, I'm going to make a decision, but I can't be confident about it. And as we heard with the official in that recent tournament, he says I can't be confident about it, or I am confident about it. Like, it just comes down to, I don't know. Ben, am I way off?
Yeah. Ben, say yes, he's way off.
All right.
Yes, he's way off.
No, I'm not sure if you agree with that, Matt. Of course I hear what you're saying. So I'm
nitpicking.
I know, but because literally, if I'm going to look at you in a tournament and say, just say, yeah, it's in or out. Just say it's in or out. And you're like, it's too close. I'm going to say, just say it's in or out.
Right,
Make a vote.
then I'll say it.
Yeah, and then, well, right. So say in or out. If not, I'm giving you a courtesy violation.
What if I flip a coin? I'm going to decide this by the flip of a coin.
That's fine. You can decide it however you want.
That's horrible.
Yeah, well, don't flip a coin then. Say in or out.
No, but I'm saying it'd be the equal to. There are close calls like that, and I don't think. Yeah, I think at that point you need to. No,
it's a close call. Yeah. Anyway, courtesy on you.
Okay. I'm gonna bring it back up. Okay, you're back.
Sorry about it. I didn't want this to turn into a bigger issue. No, obviously there. I'm going to go back to what I said at the very beginning, right? Because I knew this group vote call, the Adam Hammis Waco situation, would come up, right? I can assure you this was thought of well before that, and to be honest with you, I think that's a one of many examples of where that situation potentially would have had a different outcome with this rule.
Yeah,
it might have. It's interesting. Can I follow up on something, Matt? We were just kind of arguing, but
yes.
it talks about one of the reasons is to get the challenge of having the player who's the determination is being made for, having them kind of lobby the group and be one of the voters. But realistically, right, Robert? I mean, that player can still lobby the group. They just don't have a vote, right? I mean, they could sit there and say, no way, guys, that's definitely in bounds, right? Like, that's definitely, and they can try to still influence because they're a human being, I presume. But what you're saying is realistically, those other players, in theory, are supposed to, not really in theory, in principle, they're supposed to make their determination based on what they see, right, and what they've observed. And obviously, if there's only 3 of them, you don't get a tie. And you move on, right? That's kind of that's the clean and clear.
Yeah, and in the two things here is that first of all, every player has the right to appeal a group decision, right? So if they believe a determination is incorrect, they have the right to appeal it to whether that be your tournament director or a marshal at an event or whatever. And the other thing is that what this is really doing at its core is kind of getting rid of the need to only have one person agree with you, right? Because if it's a 2-2, then you get the call, right? So in this situation, assuming that you're always going to, you would hope that in the game of golf, not everybody would always vote for. They would vote for what they believe, not what benefits them, right? But there is that human element, right? So this is going to feel more like 3-1 votes, right? Because it's, assuming that you always vote for yourself. But this was, pushed heavily. And I support it. I think it's a great change. I think it's in the spirit of the game.
Walk me through one more scenario. And this isn't so much pushing back, and it might be very unique, but let's say I choose not to vote again, or again, I'm good intention, but I'm saying I can't make a determination. I'll flip a coin and make the call, or I just choose not to. Okay. I choose not to. It says courtesy violation. Cool. At that point, I get a courtesy violation. Is the voting over? Or it's like, no, now you got a courtesy violation and now you have to vote again, or else you're getting stroked.
No. So in that situation let's say it's the 4 of us.
Okay.
I'll be the bad guy.
Okay.
I'm not voting. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I've, whatever. Right.
Yep.
So now, let's say it's Matt, it's your shot. Right.
Yep.
So now Ben and Josh are the voters. And if they tie, then
I get brought in.
That's right.
Okay, that was the scenario. That's all I was trying to look. That's a very practical way to look at it.
Yeah, because Matt, we've all been in those C tiers where some ridiculous players just not going to participate for some reason.
And if they got that same courtesy violation again, that is a stroke though. Like later on another call.
Yeah, courtesy violations are not broken down, right? So like if you get a courtesy violation for this and then 7 holes later you scream and cuss and someone says courtesy, there's not differences of courtesy violations. That's a stroke at that.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey,
cool.
By the way, this is not necessarily a major change, but we brought it up and I'm jumping to it. Sorry, Matt, but it's not necessarily in the rules, but in some of the Q&A, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we talked about the Hammis Waco scenario, and there's a nice little clarification that I feel applies in QA OB8, which is just talking about out of bounds, and I can read the detailed lines, but guess what it clarifies for all of us, which to me it was just so obvious, is an unpainted blade of grass inside the OB line does not make a thrown disc inbounds. Hello, internet world. Like, read that twice when this comes out. It's like, because OB lines are planes, right? So you say, where's the line? And the line in this case goes up because you're on a flat ground. The plane goes up. So this whole, because literally there are people who are like, I see one blade of grass that's curled over that extended into the OB area. Therefore, I'm touching inbounds, which is not the way it works.
But let's ask the question, where does the plane start to and from? Is it stakes? And if it's not stakes and it's a painted line that's surrounding a pond?
Well, no, there's still some gray area. I agree. I'm just saying it's not the blade of grass. It's not.
Right. I like that concept, a clarification.
The plane is the inside of the OB line, right? Because
it depends, right? Let's go back to the SAT answer. There's not enough information to make an answer.
Yeah,
here,
that's
right?
true.
It totally depends on the way the wording is, right? So, OB defined by stakes, OB defined by inside of stakes, OB defined of outside of stakes.
Sure.
Those are three very different statements.
But a painted line is going to be pretty tough to actually determine where the plane is and isn't, because maybe it does jut out on a little 1-inch jut out. But like,
if it juts out on a 1-inch jut out, like in theory, that 1-inch jut out, like you're right, the plane, plane is not necessarily a perfectly perpendicular line.
Yeah. So okay, I got it. Anyways, I think we can move past that one.
We don't need to come back, but I did want to mention the blade of grass thing.
No, that's good.
It drives me crazy how many people love to harp on that.
So I wrote this. I don't write everything, but this was actually something I wrote. And just to again hammer the Adam Hammis example in, I wrote this in November. So.
Well, good forward thinking. There's another forward thinking rule update in here as well that worked out in the recent week. So that's pretty cool too. So, all right, this is the next rule update, and I don't know if I'm reading it. Let me see if I want to read it exactly off. I have AI.
I've got stuff up too.
Also,
I've got the actual revisions.
Okay, more time allotted on the fairway. That's interesting. Better defining when the clock starts. These are the same, but different. They're two talking points, in my opinion. So the first one is you get 30 seconds to, this is normal. You get 30 seconds to throw from the tee. Well, this isn't normal, defining where, but this doesn't change things for people right now. But this is now defined. 30 seconds from the tee, the drop zone, or inside, realistically, circle 2 of the putting green. Okay. Anytime you're in one of those zones, you get 30 seconds per usual. What I think is the easiest way to explain this update, and it's probably how it was broken down in here as I read it, you now get 45 seconds for all other throws. Meaning, and I think you guys broke it down this way, shots that you really didn't practice. They weren't in like the intentional necessarily place to be on this course. Meaning, not the tee, not the fairway, not the putting green. And if you're in one of these other areas, you now get 45 seconds. And that's without asking for it. That's just now how it is. Does that sound accurate?
Absolutely. So I think it's, we say on the fairway, but it's really black and white, right? Are you on the tee? Are you at a drop zone? Or are you within 20 meters of the target? If the answer is yes, 30 seconds. The answer is no, 45 seconds, right? So let's kind of, it's more than about what's predictable, right? But all three of those things, well, you can definitely predict your tee throws. Yeah, you maybe can't predict the wind or the conditions, but whatever, right? You can predict drop zones, right? And yeah, you might have a weird angle because of a tree or whatever, but everybody pretty much knows, you at least know what disc you're going to use when you step up to a 45-foot putt, right? And this rule was written a long time ago, the 30-second rule, and it was written in a par 3 era of disc golf, right? Where basically like a bad shot was an upshot, a good shot was a putt. That is no longer the case for a majority of our sport, right? And even if you were a robot and were able to put it in the exact spot on the fairway every single time that you practiced it, right? On the tee, you do not have a lie that you have to focus on hitting, right? Think about it. You're trying to hit a 10 by 30 piece of paper on a tee, like, well, anywhere, right? When was the last time you thought about your footing on the tee unless you're doing a strange run up, right? You are provided the distance on the tee. You are not provided the distance on those in between throws, right? You don't have to. You pretty much know what disc you're throwing on the tee. You may not know what disc you are throwing in the fairway, right? you have to mark your disc in the fairway. You don't have to mark a lie. You don't have to mark a disc. You know what I'm saying? But like, when you really think about it, all of these things that are kind of naturally provided to you on the tee, the distance, good footing, right? I mean, everybody has, your tee is going to have great footing, right? Even if you're in the middle of the fairway, right? You don't have to clear casual obstacles. All these little things that, just think about all the things that you do when you're throwing a second shot on a par 4 that you do not do on the tee, right? So through a lot of observation, we really realized that you need 15 seconds to do that. And it's really unfair to compare a tee throw and a fairway throw on time. You need more time in the fairway. So is our argument in this rule change that most people are probably already taking 45 seconds to begin with, because they don't realize that when they start doing their rangefinder, when they look at their lie and they start thinking, am I going to go right of that tree or left of their tree? By rule, that clock has already started.
Well,
so we are
this update specifically, or you're saying it's always been that way?
That is the current rule now. Because the rule now says once you determine your lie, and if you know where your lie is, then
that is the current. Correct. Okay, that's how.
Correct.
Right. And so the next bullet point here, if we though are going to go down this road, the next proposal in here is an update to what addressing your lie means. Is that correct? That's where this goes.
Correct. The current rule is determining your lie. Right? We are updating that to addressed, because we feel that word is maybe a little more understood. The Disc Golf Pro Tour Players Council was very, very influential on that. They said, we don't know what determined lie means. We think of it as addressed. We really thought about it, and we said, it's going to be a lot easier for us to say address the lie. And then here are some examples of addressing your lie. So the copy that you guys have, we have made small edits since then. This is the only one, I promise. So I'll read what it says now. Examples of things, any action indicating that you're preparing to throw, such as but not limited to, right? And these are all the things that I just talked about. Marking the lie with a marker disc, placing a supporting point of the lie, executing a pre-shot routine, using a rangefinder, checking the wind, clearing casual obstacles, testing the ground and footing, right? So most people are probably already violating the 30-second rule, because in their head, they're starting their 30-second clock after they do those things. And so we really did some deep analysis and saw that this rule was being broken way too much in the fairways. And we start, and you got to know how far you are, right? You got to know where the basket is. You got to know you're going to go right or left of that tree. You maybe have never thrown this shot in all of your practice rounds, right? On a tee, if you're fourth, you just saw 3 people throw the exact same shot, right? You may be there's just constant examples. So we just feel that, this is the internal, a lot of the internal debate about this is like, is this going to slow play? Because, okay, if you have 35 shots from the fairways or whatever in a round, you just do 35 times 15. And I'm like, well, A, that assumes that you're going to take that full time. And then B, that assumes you're not already doing it already, which people are. You just don't realize it, right? The other part of this is that we think that this is going to speed play up on the tee and on the putting area, because a player is we feel strongly, and so does the Disc Golf Pro Tour Players Council. We talked to them extensively about this. They feel pretty strongly that, they've said, I don't want to call somebody on a 48-second putt, because when I've got a really messy lie, I don't want them to call me on a time violation. Well, now we're saying you got 45 seconds and they got 30. So you might be willing to say, hey, that was 38 seconds on your putt. That's a time violation. Because now you've got that, 15 plus 30, or maybe it's like I throw quick. Like my shot's probably 15 seconds. So I know I've got 30 plus 15.
Okay. So to summarize this before we move on and have any questions from Josh or Ben on this, you now get, and I said this incorrectly, I think when I read this off, I did mention the fairway in there, but you now get 30 seconds from the tee, the drop zone, or inside the circle 2. All other throws are 45 seconds. And then where we just went with this is, well, when does that 45 seconds start? When does that 30 seconds start. And that was a big debate, Josh. Remember, Ben, we had this earlier or last year, like over and over. Well, when does it start? Who's calling who? Because Gannon was getting called on time violations, and we went back and forth. And Josh kind of defaulted on, well, it's when it's obvious or this or that. And like, this really helps with that. So now it says the time starts when it does still have in here the idea of determined lie, but that's only part of it. You get to determine your lie and then address your lie. Anyways, so a placing, and I think the update you guys put in there was the mini marker, right? Is that what you got?
Yeah, a couple other things.
Okay.
But, you know, the main thing here is that those examples of addressing the lie, determining the lie, like if we were not changing the other part, I'm calling it 30, 45, 30, right? Because it's kind of 30 at the front, 30 at the end, 45 in the middle, right? If we were doing 30, 45, 30, this would probably be a minor or even clerical change. Yes. Just this part about, because this is technically the rule now. We are just providing much deeper clarification on something that is misunderstood.
Okay, I can buy into that, but I think the clarification is whether it's important or not. I think it helps, even if it's just podcast hosts talking post-event about like, well, should he or should he not have been called? Because now we have very clear, he placed a mini. His foot addressed the lie. He had a disc in his hand. He was clearing ops. My point is we can make that determination now. Yes, the clock should have started right then. And I think that's what this does.
Yeah, it's fair. And one thing that's really clear is that is those sub list of things are one of 5 things, right? So if I'm standing at my lie, testing my footing, but the playing area is not clear, or maybe it's your turn to throw because you're further away, that doesn't mean that my time starts, right? Because like the previous player has to throw, you're next to throw, you've determined your lie, you've addressed the lie, and the playing area remains clear. Right, it's so funny because in F we say a person, vehicle, or animal enters the playing area after the player's allotted time has begun. The timer stops. Once it's clear, the players recess. And then through the magic unicorns of disc golf, we had a deer run in front of Gannon this weekend. Right.
Well, Ben was on the bag. So Ben, like we mentioned this a little bit, but how was it handled in the moment there?
He said, "Get off my green, bro," and took 15 more seconds and airballed his putt.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but so like that's another clarification, right? It's so funny that happened, but yeah.
But it says the player's allotted time resets, and so that would be. It says the timer stops. And then let's say the deer ran off. Now it resets and begins running. So it would start again. In this case, he was on the putting green. It'd be 30-second restart.
That's right. And that is because so that's again another thing that's kind of the rule. We're just rewriting it now.
Yep.
And you know, if you have a mental focus or a routine, like, and you get distracted because an animal runs on the fairway 20 seconds, right? The playing area is not clear, right? A spectator runs on the fairway, like any of these things that might maybe. All these weird things that happen, like we wanted to be super clear that like, hey, like once that happens, it stops and it restarts. You get to restart your full routine again, which is obviously very important.
So I'm assuming, and Josh, we'll throw it to you next here for the next rule, but there's one more addendum here, G, underneath this. So they have 30 seconds or 45 seconds, depending on what shot they're throwing. We know when that time starts. But what if a player doesn't address their lie? So G here says a player who's present at their lie, which I'm assuming means they've determined their lie, I'm guessing. But long story short, they are not addressing their lie. It says, or they engage in undue delay. I'm assuming we're just imagining someone dragging their feet intentionally to slow down the pace or whatever it is. It says that means they have taken excessive time. And if that's the case, excessive a time has a rule in here, right? Which says they receive a warning. Okay. So my question is, and again, this is a Matt Graham question. What does it mean for a player to refuse to address their lie? Like, I know it talks about undue time. Like, who's deciding this, I guess is my question. Is it the card? Is it the group's decision? Hey, you're taking too long to address your lie. We think it's undue. Is it a group decision?
It's just like anything, right? You know,
Okay.
anything that is a warning, right? So if the person is not receiving any excess time violations, one person can warn him for that, right? You know, but then if it is the second excess time violation, then then it would require a second, right? You know, and undue delay is again another thing that's already in our rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
Undue delay is anything that slows play that's not when it's the person's turn to throw, right? That's let me run to my car real quick and I'll see y'all in a minute, right? And we thought about this and we're like, well, if the timer doesn't start until somebody's addressing their lie, what if somebody's just standing 20 feet behind their lie with their arms crossed and it's clearly their turn to throw?
Right.
We're trying to think into the corners and the problems before they occur.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just saying, in that scenario you just illustrated, folding their arms 20 feet behind their lie, that is a group's decision to say. But I just feel like, and again, maybe it's just the skeptical side of me. I feel like there's going to be people, and this is true in any sport, there's going to be people who are like, no, I'm slowly moving towards my lie. This is just my normal pace. Like, I'm going so far out into the gray, but I think in general, that's good to have this clarified, right? So you can also request extra time per usual, as you've mentioned, Robert, take a bathroom break. So if you need to use the bathroom.
But the bathroom break has got to be reasonable. See, I don't really want to debate, but I want to debate what's a reasonable bathroom.
Well, it depends what they had for lunch.
Is it?
I mean, that's really
right.
what it
That's exactly.
So, like we get this question a lot because we use the word reasonable a lot in the rules. I'm a very big defender of that word because first and foremost is the point of reasonable is not to define what reasonable is, but it's to define what unreasonable is, right? We certainly, is going to the bathroom taking 5 minutes reasonable? Who knows? Is taking an hour reasonable?
Well, this is Josh's usual point, is like, it's easy to tell what's unreasonable. Yeah.
And exactly. And then the second thing is that reasonable in I'm not a lawyer. My boss is, so I hear legal stuff all the time. The reasonable in the eyes of the law is what a normal person would find to be reasonable, average, right? So if you take an hour to go to the bathroom, a normal person is going to say that's unreasonable, right? So anytime, and the word reasonable allows us to not have to think of every single possible situation. You were allowed a 2-minute bathroom break. Okay, what happens if I have to go to the bathroom? Okay, now it's 5. Oh, I had this one time 6 years ago where it's never going to end, right?
All right. So I agree. And I think it's fair. And I argued that point before on reasonable. And I think it is something I've learned. I've taken away. It's easy to tell what's unreasonable. Let the group decide that. All right, Josh, go on.
I call time violation. This is an unreasonably long discussion about being reasonable. So I would like us to move along.
I'm going to use one of my extensions.
Yeah. No, we haven't got there yet. Are we there?
We haven't gotten there.
Okay.
Yes, which I want to, but let's. I guess we're kind of taking these in order, which is fine. Although I will tell you, I'm interested in them out of order. And by the way, Robert, I don't think we're going to slog through all of them. But let's.
No, I figured we go through the majors and maybe some of the minors, but the clericals, I would fall asleep talking about those.
Yeah, although I did read them all today, believe it or not. I'm sure you got them 10 times. So, okay, scorecard examination. This is interesting. I'm summarizing. We can elaborate the details, but basically what we're saying is all players in a group have to keep score for all players in the group. And if you don't, you're disqualified. That's my short and easy read of the rule. But every player's keeping their own scorecard. I think this has evolved quite a bit, and hopefully this is happening pretty regularly today. Ben, I'm curious your perception being a caddy on these pro tour events. Is every single player keeping score for every other player on the card? Are you seeing that today?
And a caddy can do that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. I don't think I've been a part of a card where no one's not keeping score for everyone.
So they should be, but they can be disqualified if they don't, right?
Yeah. So everything you just said, Josh, is already the rule. The change here, and this is a kind of a completely different. We debated whether this was a major or a minor, but since we were introducing a new concept, we put it in major. And basically, a player must show their scorecard upon request to an official or other players of the group, right?
Right.
So if I have reason to believe that you're not keeping score, well, I'll use me as an example. Let's say, Matt, for some reason, Matt hasn't seen me take score in the last couple holes. I haven't been participating in, the common occurrence at the tee of, I just say, oh, I got a 4, nobody sees my phone, nobody sees me pull a paper out, whatever, right? I can now, or Matt can now say, Robert, show me your scorecard, right? Because it's just a way to help enforce that. We don't anticipate that happening very often. Spoiler, TDs can see behind the scenes who is not scoring digitally already. So it just provides clarification, and it kind of gives some power to legislate that situation, because we are aware of people using the copy feature, where if you don't score hole 1, for example, and you go to hole 2, it will say, hey, do you want to copy Matt's scorecard? And you just hit copy, and it'll do all the scores, right?
I didn't know that, because I've skipped it before, and I felt like it said, oh, you didn't. Right? The point of that is, let's say I'm absent and miss the first 4 holes. It's an easy way for me to quickly get caught up with the scoring. Or let's say that we're in a threesome and then somebody leaves and I have to go join another group and make a new scorecard. But people were abusing that. So we just wanted to be very clear that Ben's smirk on his face tells me he liked that rule. I mean, he liked that feature.
Yeah. Ben, you got to keep
love
score.
That feature.
I just can't wait, though, until we have like Gannon asking AB after every hole to see his scorecard. That's going to be awesome.
I see your
I hope something like that happens.
But no, this one's not that. This one is kind of like, one just feels like one of those, like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
No, I agree. Completely makes sense. So in fact, I say like we move on. So like another one that maybe is more substantial is provisional throw. And I say substantial. Obviously, the amount of times it comes up as a percentage of play on the disc golf course, it's not substantial. But this has kind of been in our back of our mind for a long time, drilled into our minds, which is I'm genericizing, I think, what the community often feels, which is, oh, if you don't know what you should do, or if there's a disagreement, or there's any kind of dispute, blah, 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 anything, just call a provisional. And sometimes people literally right now don't even explain really. They're just like, fine, I'm going to play a provisional. And they just play it out, right? And then they try to decipher it later. But I think the rules now are clarifying that, first of all, there's actually specific scenarios when you can do provisionals and when you can't. And secondly, when you choose to do a provisional, you have to actually say why you're playing the provisional and make it clear. So we can kind of read the rules, but that's my summary interpretation.
Yeah, and I want to add...
Very, very good.
And I want to add, I feel like the scenario in my disc golf life of 18 years where this would have come up the most is the consideration for abandoning a throw. So I threw it into the bushes in the worst spot possible, and everyone's like, oh, you should just re-tee. And I'm going, I don't know. And then we all go, just throw a provisional and then walk down there and decide if you want to abandon your lie. That can't happen in this scenario. And maybe that's always been the case, but it's specified here. It says when the player is considering abandoning a throw, provisional throws are not available. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, it's one of those things where we've always not allowed it, but it's never been clear, right? Okay. Because the problem with that scenario, Matt, and this is kind of what Josh kind of touched on, is you should never have the result of the provisional influence your decision on the original lie.
Absolutely.
Right? Provisionals are to save time and to not mess up, right? So let's say it's a short par 3, Matt.
Yeah, I park it. Yeah,
you
throw it in.
Yank it, right? Oh, whatever. And then you ace it on your rethrow.
Yep.
You're like, okay, I guess that's
easy decision. Yeah, easy decision.
Right.
I'm abandoning the lie.
So you have to not only declare your starting provisional, which is not new, but the new part of this is that you have to explain why, right? So hey, I'm not sure if my disc is in bounds, so I'm going to throw from here in case it's out of bounds.
Oh, I see. And I think most people know why in most cases, but they don't have to declare it. You'll often hear provisional, right? And so this is going to take that obscurity or whatever.
Yeah, just a little bit more clarity, which I think is good. To your point, Robert, I don't think it actually changes much of what probably the intention was, but it certainly clarifies, because I think there is some abuse of people even being lazy and understanding the rule and just literally saying it's basically like, yeah, I'm calling a provisional if there's any uncertainty. And again, to clarify, like the way I interpret is you don't get any free throws. So you don't get to use it when you're trying to decide if you're going to abandon the throw. You don't get to use it when you're trying to decide or not a penalty throw applies. right? Like the group has to actually make a decision. You don't get to say, well, is there a penalty or not? I'm doing a provisional to see if I can avoid the penalty.
Yeah,
right?
so we reference somewhat. You're on the right track, right? We reference appeals in that section, and the reasoning for that is let's say that I foot fault, and everyone agrees that I foot faulted. Josh called it, Ben seconded it. There's no question about whether I foot faulted, but I don't know if it's a penalty or a warning. Okay, well, I guess I'll just play two lies out. One, like, I guess I need to putt from one being a penalty and one being a no. Right? That's not what that's about, right? So that's what that's clarifying. And the other thing is that we're removing the abandoning throw is one of those things where it's always been the case. We're adding that in as clarification. The rules currently say that you can use a provisional when a disc is potentially missed a mandatory.
Yeah,
that will not be allowed. And the genesis to revelation of this is originally, when you missed a mandatory, there was no limitations on drop zones, right? So currently, a lot of people don't know this. A drop zone has to be within 10 meters of a mandatory. Without that, it requires a waiver. So if you're 300 something feet away, you might be like, I'm not going to walk all the way back here. So without that drop zone rule, I'm not going to walk 300 feet back. So I guess I'll just throw a provisional. That's why that rule exists now. But with that 10-meter clarification, there's no situation where you would need to throw a provisional, like just turn around and walk 30 feet backwards.
Okay. Yeah. So let's hit a few of these just very high level by almost title only, and then we'll move into some of the other more interesting ones. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. Let's see here. Why I've lost. Okay, I've lost where I was, but I'm going to pull it up. 3, 2.
You tell me.
1. They talk about team play. I'm not going to get into that now, but everyone can look into that. Team play, match play, team doubles, things that you might be interested
college disc golf stuff, collegiate disc golf is kind of a driver there. There's been a lot of evolution. So
how to change if you have a group of fewer than 3 people. So this has happened actually kind of recently in a tournament. Either I was playing or I was caddying for my son, but you had 3 people or one person didn't show up, and then you had 2 people, so they waited for the card behind them. This was at an A-tier recently. And then I think one went forward, one went backwards is what ended up happening.
Yeah, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on this one, right? This one is just one of those things where, and I'll give a big shout out to somebody of y'all's era. John Berkram is a member of RRAC. John Berkram is the one who pointed this problem out. Basically, everybody knows you can't play as a twosome, right? Nobody knows what you're supposed to do when that situation occurs. So we just simply codified it and just basically listed a set of procedures like, hey, you're in that situation, this is what you do.
Yeah, and I like at Junior Worlds, we had Doug Bjerkes himself join a twosome junior card with us, and that was cool.
You can play. You can have an official
right
as a marker or an official with you in a twosome, but that is generally only happens at something like a Worlds where there's a cut or there is just an extreme situation where it can't be avoided.
And I like the little comment that says the tournament official may throw the holes along with the players. I get a kick out of that.
I was just going to say,
did Doug throw with them?
Well,
it's the marker rule, yeah.
I'm trying to remember what happened because I feel like at one of the rounds of Junior Worlds it did happen, and I think it was fair because it creates a pace of play thing where you're moving along, then you're backed up on every hole if you're a twosome, and I do like the ability to have somebody throw to slow that pace down. It's
not only a pace of play issue, but it's a little bit of fairness, right?
Yes.
Why is one card getting 2 win reads and my card's getting 1 win read?
Yeah. So it can happen.
So definitely lots of detail in there, so anybody who's curious, go read it once this is published.
Flex start events, if I'm summarizing, I don't want to say have become more lax because that's not necessarily true, but flex starts are falling closer in line with league PDGA leagues in that even you may be able to drink alcohol during your flex start round if certain rules are permitted in that area. But that's I don't want to say major, but it's interesting. People can go check that out as well.
I don't know if you're going in order, but if you are, you missed one that could be of interest just to watch for is events can, if they choose to, draw a cut beyond the pay beyond the cash line. They have to publish that before you register, so you should be able to check that out. But more flexibility for events to actually do that if they feel like they have justification or a reason to do that in their event. So you could actually extend the cut line deeper, but not pay all the way to the cut line, which means you could play that final round and not get paid.
Right. Good. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, and I do want to point out two things on the flex starts really quick that I think are very, very big changes. Is that we're going to allow groups to play through, right?
Yep.
You know, if I play professionally and I have been on cards with 3 or 4 other pros behind a foursome of MA4s, and that doesn't mean that it's not awesome that they're out there. I love that they're out there, and everybody's got to start somewhere. But that's not going to happen in a non-flex start setting, right? And so you can now play through, and we're going to allow players to play twice or more in flex starts next year.
Across different divisions,
different
right? Like they have
So
to play different
unless
divisions.
you are a male rated 970 or above and classified as a professional, you are eligible to play more than one division.
So I can play MA1 and MA40 or MP40. I could do either or. Could I do
MPO.
3? Can I do 3?
You can do as many as you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's you can, but you have to
MA2,
you can only,
MA1.
You can only play the division one time.
I'm
and
doing
you
it.
have to declare which you have to pay for every round.
Yeah.
And you got to declare ahead of time which division, right? You can't go out and shred it and be like, all right, there's my pro round. Oh, I screwed up. There's my MA2 round.
Awesome.
No, you can't do that, right?
No, but people will definitely do this. This is fun. I like that clarification.
This is all just
I can fill a whole day of tournament, man. I'm going to do MA2 because I'm invited there still, I think, with my rating. MA1, MP40, MA40. Cool.
I play MP40 most of the time. And like, I'm stoked that I can play MP40 and MPO next year.
Yeah.
In flash starts. Stoked.
Very cool. All right. So that is cool. Again, they're going to want to read through this themselves. If they're a member, especially read through all the details here. There's more. And if we miss anything, we'll come back to it. Moving obstacles. I think defining the casual obstacle is interesting because it's come up in rounds before and we're just going to move past this. But essentially it's saying like, hey, if you can't move it by yourself, that's one thing. The other thing is if it's embedded, like it's a rock that's half underground and you just see the tip of it. You're not out there with a shovel digging to move it.
Like, this also clarifies that you're like, not only do I not have to help you, I can't help you.
Okay.
Right? We've all been like, hey, come help me move this log. Well, we're clarifying that if it's small enough to where it's considered a casual obstacle, you shouldn't have to need help.
Okay.
Yeah, Ben, no helping. Yeah, I'm being kind of sarcastic here because the embedded thing, there's going to be somebody who's like, well, that stick fell out of that tree and it's just 1 inch in the ground, right? It's 1 inch in the ground because of the way it fell. Is that embedded in the ground?
I mean, embedded means unable to be removed.
Okay. All right.
Because we had that discussion around rocks and boulders. Like
unable to be moved by one person
out,
in a reasonable
Correct.
allotted amount of time because their time starts even from clearing the playing area, as we know. So
yeah, it's like what I'm getting ready to say is going to sound like a joke, but like you would not believe the amount of time and consideration that we take in like, do we need to use the word embedded here? It was probably 30 or 40 messages on our message board.
Yeah,
I believe it.
Of what that word means and didn't mean. But it's important that when those words are like, I know, like I like without joking, like those words have to be very, very clear in those situations.
Okay, I am going to start jumping around a bit to what I find interesting, and if we miss stuff, we can go back to what you found interesting. I'm jumping to match play for just a second. Team Challenge, New England Team Challenge is something that's big up here in the Northeast. Well over 1,000, if not 1,500 players plus do this every off-season, I guess off-season, whatever, winter. And I have been in match play against competitors, and it's not PDGA sanctioned, so that's a whole nother thing now. But I've been in match play against competitors who say, hey, once the hole is complete, either I won or someone else won, or I hold out, or I've resigned my play. I've conceded that the hole is over. I can do whatever I want. I can practice putt. I can throw extra shots because the hole is done and we haven't started the next one. And every hole is its own hole in match play.
No,
I argued that for a while. No, this is how the PGA does it. The whole thing. You have now defined it. When a player can no longer win a hole, it's complete and all play must cease. Everything else is a practice throw. So it's defined, very clear.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I don't think no matter what you do, Like, this is going to be half the people are going to say, great, thank you. The other half are going to say, you're a bunch of idiots.
Yes.
Right. And I think there are so many times where we reach these lines in the sand, and I don't know if there's a right answer to this, but there has to be an answer. Right. And we leaned on, no, when the hole's done, it's over. And the only argument I've ever heard for why that shouldn't be the case is because, well, golf does it.
Yeah. Okay. We've all heard about the 5 minute prior to your tee time rule. There's only slight adjustments here to help clarify the where and when this 5 minutes starts, or where that place and location is. It's defined. Nothing really surprising there. The one addition, it does bring into a bathroom break again.
At least we let people go use the bathroom, right? That last quick before the round goes.
This has always been kind of implied, right? Where, because, so it was kind of like, yeah, sure.
Yes.
This has happened enough. Shout out to Casey White.
If you know, you know. Hold on,
we'll
I'm going to bring you in here. Ben dropped out for a second. In and out with his Starlink. Okay. I don't think we mentioned Nick either. Nick hasn't been on 2 episodes in a row. Nick is busy tonight as well in a wedding.
Yeah.
Okay. So that practice round, I want to come in a little bit further down, because there's everything from tobacco at different tiers they can choose, disqualifications, ratings manipulation has always been kind of a thing that's talked about. So there's details there. As we start to get down to, I want to really jump significantly further down to majors and elite series. Okay. So way down the list here,
which is what we talk about most on our show. So yes, I agree. There's some interesting things here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the one thing that I wanted to point out in the clerical before we get into the stuff I knew we would talk about is one of the things that I'm really excited about is they were a regulated area quick reference guide. There are so many questions about, do I have to take relief? Do I get free relief? Do
Casual
I get
relief,
extra things, right? So we're going to put in the question and answer section, we're going to have a quick reference guide that defines the area, the penalty for the area, where you play your next lie, do you get relief, and what your stance can and can't do in an effort to help players understand these things better. I think that's one of the major wins. That's just a clerical because we're just explaining how something works. But I really want people to see that and to help learn how to understand those areas because, and the other kind of minor change in there is that we're changing relief area to required relief area. We're not changing anything about it. We're just adding that word required because most people think about it like, oh, is that a mandatory relief or is that one that I can play? And it's technically a relief and a casual area. So we're just saying required relief area, just hoping that word adds some of that clarification. So I think that was the only thing worth mentioning in the clericals, but big thumbs up to our rack for that work. And now let's get into cracking my knuckles 4.0.
Okay. These changes that we're about to talk about in the simplest version apply only to majors, MPO, FPO, and elite events as per the Disc Golf Pro Tour, not including Q Series, which also
any major is applicable, but there are sections where we say this is only applicable to MPO and FPO.
Okay.
But any major is applicable unless clarified.
Okay. So I've seen clarifications. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. So the other note here is they've set a floor, if you will, for registering for these MPOs at majors or elites. In years past, you may have seen somebody sign up that somehow got in at like 890 rated up at Smugs, I think, one year. And it was just incredible to see how far they went over par. Good for them for playing. But this addresses that, and it says you must be, and this moves it from 935 up to 950. That's your floor. You have to be at least 950 to play these events. FPO players must be at least 825. Okay. Bib requirements. Again, you can look at all that. Again, tobacco, smoking, player code of conduct. I want to move down to some of the biggest one here, I feel like. The one that AI thought was the most interesting. And this is extra time. Time extensions. You are able to implement 2 time extensions per player per round at pro majors and elite series events per just what we just talked about. So, and this is where it does specify it, Robert, players in MPO and FPO. So this is MPO, FPO at majors and elites. They are able to request an extension of 30 seconds to their allotted time. We talked about this, Josh, Ben. I don't remember who thought it was crazy. People are like, what? This is wild. It won't work. I honestly think this is a great, great change and allows for situations for a player to say, hey, I need more time. 2 times per round. Now, let's get into a little bit of the details here, and then we can kind of banter back and forth about it. You're able to do this 2 times around. If you go over your allotted regular time, which again, if it's not on a tee pad, it's not on a drop zone, it's not in a circle, you have 45 seconds. If you go over 45 seconds and you haven't called a time extension, players on your card are now obligated to call that for you. That is the same way they're obligated to call you on foot faults or anything else. They're obligated to call that for you and say you are now getting a time extension. What I like about that is it's a simple way of calling a warning without penalty per se. It's kind of allotting for that. So players maybe are more likely to kind of say, hey, you're over time. And in a, I don't want to say a nice way, but in a nice way. Now, because you have the 2 times, Robert, they have 2 times. And let's say I call on one and I say, hey, you're into your extension time that's being used. You only have 1 left. The additional one, they use it somewhere. And now they have 0 time extensions left. What happens when they go into, we'll call it extra time over their allotted time? At this point, it is a stroke, isn't it? Or is it a warning?
Yeah. So you gotta and this is gotta be super clear. We are talking MPO, FPO, majors, and elites. We're not talking about 99.99% of PDGA events.
Right.
So normal events, warning, stroke, right? For these events, it's going to be extension, stroke.
Yes. Right. Okay. So that's correct. Now, what I find interesting about this is someone can call that for you, as I mentioned, because you're going into extra time. They're going to call it for you. It's not quite a penalty, but it does remove one of your extra times. Otherwise, it says if the player exceeds the additional time allotted by a time extension. So let's just say they're in a 45-second area, plus the time extension. They're now at minute 15 seconds, okay, or 75 seconds. And now they go beyond that. I find this interesting. They receive a warning. Okay. This is now this
that's
is
just like a
hypothetical.
normal warning, right? For
yes,
being
a normal warning.
That
Because
is now an excessive time warning.
Because the rule says you can't use 2 time extensions on a single throw. Correct. That's why the warning exists. Otherwise, I'm going, why not just say, well, now you're into your 2nd time extension before that warning?
Can't use
there
2
must have been a reason,
one.
but it says because you can't use 2 per throw.
Yeah, we don't want somebody taking a minute 45 on a shot, right? Yeah, so I think the big things here is obviously this was, I alluded to in the very beginning of the show, right? We had feedback that completely changed a rule, right? We all know last year that this rule was presented as a whole. The vast majority of our membership said, look, on tour, I get it, but at my C tiers, you're out of your mind, right? The Disc Golf Pro Tour created this concept. This was them and the Disc Golf Pro Tour Players Council. They've championed this idea. They really pushed hard. Myself and Mike Sullivan had multiple meetings with various members, many conversations. If you ever saw at a tour event, me and Ella Hansen or Aaron Gossage or kind of standing over somewhere talking, we were probably talking about this. But the big thing here is that the Players Council has, I'm not going to say unanimously, but one person away from unanimously said, this will 100% make us comfortable calling time violations on our card mates.
Well, because of the extension.
Correct. And secondly, they have committed, and I'm calling them out right now. They have committed to doing this, right? And we're going to revisit in, July, right? Because you got to put this stuff on the scorecards, right? Your digital notes, the little bubble that you see next to your whole score or on the physical piece of paper, right? Warnings and penalties and all that stuff is required to be notated on the scorecard, right? So next summer, in about a year from now, we're going to pull data from all these tour events. We're going to see, So yeah, wow, there was 37 of these called. This is great, right?
Right.
We don't know.
That's good stat tracking. I think so that's cool. I think that's great. I'm curious if they're saying they would be more comfortable or committed to calling a warning, or if they're saying they're more comfortable because they can call an extension. Are they saying both?
extensions. So they said that if it is at the point when we combined the 30, 45, 30 concept,
Mhm.
which they approved of,
Mm-hmm.
right? We said, look, this is a problem at every C tier, right? For all the reasons that we started the show out with, right? There are more additional reasons why players on tour need more time, right?
Yep.
I have never in my life thrown a shot worth $10,000, right? I don't even, I'll get nervous like, oh my God, if I miss this putt, I'll lose $40. You know, like I can't imagine, right? There are times where they just need their hearts racing and they just need that moment, right? They lobbied for this. We are, you know, at the end of the day, we're a membership organization. We're going to listen to our membership. And this, you know, is a very, 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 very minor part of our membership in terms of percentage. But when there's so much push from one set of groups that we can kind of do, it's like, okay, let's find a way from this to make this work. So I think we maybe pushed it a little too quick last year, I think. And you know, credit to the public feedback process. You know, public feedback said, don't do this. We thought about it and we're like, you know what? This still makes a lot of sense for the tour. We spent a lot of time meeting with them, and here we are.
So the last note on that, and I'm curious for clarification, section C of this rule 4.09C, if a player exceeds their allotted time, which we already talked about, after using both time extensions, so they okay, wait, that's a warning. I'm looking there somewhere else. Where does it talk about?
No, they do not receive a warning. That's the extension penalty that we were talking about.
Here it is. Sorry, I was in C. I was out of place thinking where I was. So it's under A3.3. If a player is using a time extension, okay, is this meaning, when does this have to be called? Prior to or at any time?
Well, it depends, right? If it's after the time is exceeded and a player calls them,
it starts.
Extension. Or if I'm 30 seconds into my 45 seconds and I'm nowhere near ready to throw, I can then at 10 seconds later say extension.
That's the most likely scenario, in my opinion, is going to be someone going, I'm getting close to the end. I need to call an extension.
Right. So,
but they could call it. They could call it before as they address their lie. Okay.
They could have a putt to win the tournament and say, I'm going to call an extension here. And now they have 60 seconds to putt that.
Okay.
Right. So what we're saying here in 3, and I'm going to read it here. If a player is using a time extension and the playing area is no longer clear, the allotted time resets to the time specified in 802.03c and play proceeds if the player had not called the time extension.
Yes, I want to know about the last portion of that. What does it mean that it acts as if they have not called their extension?
So the playing area is no longer clear. That's the deer thing.
Sure.
We talked about that, right? The allotted time resets to where it is. Are you putting? Are you throwing? Are you teeing? Right? And now what we're saying is that time extension has been wiped away.
Has it been used, though?
No.
Okay, so you would have 2 again. If an animal walks into my lie.
Do a full reset. It is a full reset back to where you were.
Okay, so a deer walks up, but I had already called extension, but now a deer walks up and it walks away. It resets the normal time, and I could decide, do I want to use my extension or not?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right,
Absolutely.
Cool. Full reset. Got it. All right, Josh, what else do we have? We're getting close to the end here, but is there any other interesting ones that stand out to you?
I mean, 410, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, yes, 410.
Yep. Yeah, I was looking at my list of things I'm interested in, and that is on the list. So, right. So we could see a major event scheduled to finish on a Sunday could actually finish on a Monday. And depending on the circumstances, everybody in the final round could play on an extended Monday, right? Or we could end up having like a final 12, right, players playing to win a major championship on Monday. And obviously I just picked a scenario. It's not just majors. But I was just kind of giving that as a play out. So so what's happening? When could we see a Monday finish?
Yeah, it's super, like we use the word Monday finishes, right? But it's technically like an extension of competition of 24 hours, right? But assuming it ends on Sunday, right?
Yep.
So again, this is another one that is only applicable to MPO and FPO, right? We're not going to extend the Junior Worlds into Monday so the kids aren't going to miss another day of school. Like these are the conversations and things that we have to think about, which is crazy, right? So at the end of the day, so the reason why the extension of competition has not been a thing until now is we realized that we have kind of fully transitioned from the weekend warrior to the actual professional disc golfer, right? Back in the day, if you remember 15 years ago, USCDC was Wednesday to Saturday.
Yep.
And the reasoning for that was so all the people could fly home on Sunday so they go back to work on Monday, right? And that's actually the Jeremy Colling situation. They were going to extend to the next day, and everybody was like, we can't, right? So this is one of the most, flowcharty kind of sets of rules, right? Jeff Spring understands it. Phil DeLone, those are the director of competition and the tour director. Those guys understand it. Myself and Mike Sullivan understand it. And it's kind of one of those things where as long as the 4 or 5 of us kind of know what's going on, like we will advise, right? So the big thing here is that when less than 16 people, so this doesn't even have to be bad weather on a Sunday, right? Maybe we had such horrible play on Thursday that now the event is just not going to finish like we thought. It's going to be a 54-hole event. This allows us to get back to the number of scheduled holes that we were originally going to have. It also prevents a tie at a world championship. If we have horrific weather again on Monday, at Waco, we might just say, guys, we've tried. It's the 24-hour rule. We're just going to have co-champions. I'm sorry. That will not happen at a world championship, right? We can argue whether you should have 2 Waco champions or not. No one's going to argue you should have 2 world champions, right?
That would be unfortunate.
So when less than 16 people have not finished their round, right? So you're talking the top card, the second card, the third card, and at most the fourth card, right? So they've got at most 9 holes, 10 holes, right? That lead card's probably on 10 or 11 at that point. They're just going to pick right back up to play tomorrow, finish the tournament, right? This also solves playoff problems, right? If you have a marathon playoff, weather could be perfect. Like, Barry and Kenny had a 10-hole playoff one year at USCDC, and they were worried about running out of light. When there are more than 16 people, let's just say it's one of those horrific weather weekends, and there are still 70 people who have not finished. 72 will make the number easy. 72 people have not entered, right? Finished. We debated left and right. Should it be a number of shots? Should it be a number of positions? And at the end of the day, we realized that, we're trying to crown a champion. We're not trying to find out who is in 32nd. And that's no offense to 32nd on tour. That is an incredible accomplishment that I can never dream of, right? But we're trying to crown a champion. So if we have more than 16 people, we're going to cut it to 12. No ties. So if there's a 3-way tie for 12, those 12 are not in. We're only taking 11, right? That makes media very easy. There are tons of logistics. Think about all the volunteers and all the staff you see at one of these events. Now we got to figure this out on a Monday by keeping it to a maximum of 4 groups or controlling some of those logistics. But 12 people, if that group had more than 9, we then do the normal procedure of the cutting of the holes, right? The lead cards played 10 holes, so we got to go and throw some scores out. And now that final round is now a 10-hole round. Right? We then make a new cut. We have an extra round of play. And if that lead card has played 10 holes, we're going to play 11 through 18 on Monday, right? What are we doing? We're getting back to that 72 holes for the champion, right? Let's say that they've got 14 holes. Well, we got to cut it at some point, right? So in that situation, the maximum amount of holes would be 9, right? So we say, all right, we had a 4-hole round. We're going to play the back 9 on Monday. And then the most important thing here is that in the craziest extreme, we have thought into all the corners. We're trying to figure all these things out. If we have some crazy thing, at the end of the day, we're giving some power to our TDs and our Phil and Jeff to make these decisions. We've covered if a player is unable or unwilling to continue, like they don't finish 90th, they finish at the bottom of that cut. So if somebody's just like, look, I got to get home. You're going to get 12th place money, not 9th. You're not going to miss cash in that situation, right? And if there's a whole, let's say you're dealing with bad weather, right? So maybe a tree fell and 16 is unplayable, right? We're just going to skip hole 16. So we try to think of all these scenarios. Like if you're like a logistics nerd, you're going to love this. But it's important that we, as staff and the leaders of these tours understood it, but we also wanted it to be out there for our players so they know, like, okay, I know the back nine, the weather's really bad this week. I know the back nine's really important because that might be the finals.
Yeah. And this is definitely all there. I don't want to say flow chart, but it is there, and it's probably a flow chart that helped make that. And then I think this one's just kind of entertaining to close with. And when I say entertaining, I mean recently the word marshal has been thrown around a lot. Officials have been thrown around a lot. This has a clarification, if you will, clerical, in that it's defining marshal and official, the differences there. And so you have realistically the highest level of supervision can declare somebody a marshal. So that's a director of competition, not a tournament director. So a tournament director cannot declare a marshal. Only directors of like the highest level can do that. Tournament directors can declare officials, and officials can be overruled by marshals. So just to put it in there, it is there. It is clerical. It's just defining what that is more.
Yeah, if I'm marshaling and we got a tournament spotter who has been empowered to make calls, says that's out of bounds, and I look at it and like, no, right? Currently, that would be an appeal process. And we started thinking about it, and we're like, no, I'm just going to be like, I'm overruling you. That's in bounds, right?
How about this? I'm going to close with something. I put you on the spot. You can decline to answer. How likely is it that marshals should input themselves into rules calls? Like, what is the advice or the strategy of the PDGA with that?
And I know why you're asking me, obviously, because
I'm just curious your perspective.
I was on that hole when that occurred. I was down the fairway, so I kind of saw the whole thing kind of evolving. I support the call that my colleague made. It's the right call. Marshals were empowered to make calls. This is sports. Sometimes you have to make calls, and sometimes calls are missed. That's if there's a sport that doesn't have that situation, I'd love to see it. Right?
Yeah, I guess I was being a little bit more specific in the sense of no. The strategy, the strategy of the PDGA in the sense of that might have been a right call. Josh and I, we've all debated: is it a correct call? Yes. Is it a right call? Maybe not, but that's fair. But I guess I'm just thinking, like, we talked about maybe being coached to do certain things. I'm guessing in the NFL and even the NHL, like, hey, let's let them play, right? It's a big final or it's a championship event. You don't want to see them getting called or the refs making those decisions necessarily. That's more what I'm getting to. Not necessarily was the rule, the letter of the law followed. And I'm not even asking that specific scenario. I guess I'm asking going forward, how would you advise that? Like, yeah, interject yourself, or what would you say?
It's so easy to be reactionary there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get to your point here. I want to add one more thing. Have the three of you seen Ilk and Grow, the USAMs?
Yes.
Right. You know who the marshal was for that?
No.
Me.
My buddy Paul Cran's lost thanks to you.
Yes.
No,
yes. But right. So like there's a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
You have that situation where I was getting roasted for not making the call.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a situation where someone is getting roasted for making the call, right?
Yeah.
So, it's there's not
That's
a
great point. That's
right?
a great point, honestly. Yeah.
So
Oh, Ben, you're here.
Yeah, Matt, you just leave me on the screen when I have nothing to say. So
all he's talked about is deer scoring and then calling me a genius.
But that is such a good point. Like that's something that people probably don't think about. Like I don't know. No one actually football Ilk and Grow, but that's a great point. You get roasted either way.
So
I
is
guess
your
that's
default?
what you sign up for as a referee. Like referees will get roasted either way.
But at the end of the day, we're always going to look at marshalling practices, right? We're, of course, when we have a high profile situation like that, we look into it. But, as somebody who marshaled that event, I mean, I made 8 calls that week, right? So this notion that we waited, for the last minute is it's ridiculous, right? That the marshal has not been named publicly. I'm not going to say his name just for his privacy.
It's all good.
But like the fact that somebody said that he had not made any calls all week is ridiculous.
Right.
Right. So it's so every time we have an event, we're always, every single day, we're getting together, we're talking about our calls, we're saying, would you have done it this way? How would you have done it? How would you have talked to that person? So the only difference between what happened that day with Kristen is it was just happened on camera.
You don't have to tell me the details of those post-round conversations because you mentioned you have those. You said, we talk about our calls, maybe how we would. That's good. That's healthy. That's what we talked about. That probably happens and should happen. Without saying who or what, were there people who disagreed and said, "Oh man, I probably would not have called that"? Were there people that said that?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
I'm just going to say that we got some footage that did not air, right?
Okay.
From different angles.
Yeah.
And we all looked at it and said, like, yeah, that's the right call.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he got the call right.
We do think by the letter of the law. I think we all agree by the letter of the law it was the correct call.
Yeah. And the thing is that obviously, like, I want to be clear, like, oh, we're not supposed to use footage to make calls. This is, this is happy hour sitting around at the hotel.
Yeah.
Having an IPA after a long day, right? So, but until you're in that situation with, that afternoon, I marshaled the chase car to men, and Macbeth walks up to me and he's like, "So I guess I got to wash my feet, huh?" And I said, "Paul, you always have to, So it's easy to be a keyboard warrior or somebody at a mic. I'm not taking shots at y'all, but when you're standing right there and thousands of people and cameras and players, like it's not easy. And, I don't know if I would have had the cojones to make that, and respect to my colleague for not only doing that, but at the end of the day, being right.
I do know the individual, and I have nothing negative to say. I think it was something for us to talk about.
It was Evan Kearns, everyone.
Yeah, Evan Kearns.
Yeah. That'll do, my friends.
That'll do, my friends. I just pulled this up. His sound bite. We love using that.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, I got roasted for the Ilk and Gross situation.
Interesting.
No matter what you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's substance to be talked about, and I think everyone changes based off of their own experiences. And for what it's worth, right call or not, you've probably in some way it's affected the way you make calls going forward as well. The Ilk and Grow situation, Paul Crayons, but it also is going to affect this Marshall in his own way.
The interesting thing about the Ilk and Grow situation is everyone assumes that I had the exact same angle as the camera.
Right. Yep.
Right. And that was the 7th hole of that playoff, and not that matters, but if you've ever been to Toboggan, walking down and up that hill just over and over. I remember before that 7th hole of that playoff, I looked at the TD and jokingly was like, "Hey, bro, you got 2 trophies? Like, I'm not walking up this hill again." So of course that's why I didn't make the call, is because I didn't want to walk back up the hill.
Yeah,
so there's
exactly.
there's the urban legend, and if you've ever been to Toboggan, you probably will not disagree with me.
That's funny. Cool. Well, this has been great, man. We appreciate your time. These rules will be posted. I'll put a link in the show notes here, or the description posting to. I'm assuming I'll have it by then, or maybe not. The PD, you guys can provide it to me.
It'll be available Wednesday at PDGA.com. Our normal stories, and if you subscribe to our email newsletter, it'll absolutely be in there. Please give feedback. It's something as simple as, "I love this rule," is "I hate this rule," right? That is good. We collect, and by we, I mean I log and collect all of that. It is a critical part. All of these make sense to me. That doesn't mean they're going to make sense to everybody, and that's okay.
I know I didn't say much this podcast, but here's my feedback. I love the 45 seconds on the fairway or off or whatever, and I love the flex start rules. Those are probably my favorite. So I think those are no brainers.
I think I think it's going to be very positively received. I think that even if you don't like this or that, I think overall part of our goal this year was kind of modernization, and I think if you look through all of these, you can kind of see that theme of modernization of the rules.
Fantastic.
Like, I have Gannon outside because I didn't want him to listen to the rules out of confidentiality.
But
I know he's gonna jump for joy once he hears the 45-second thing.
He better tune in to Staggered
Well,
Stance.
yeah, the 45-second thing and the option to call extensions, right? So Gannon can get.
Oh, extensions too.
There is
yeah.
no individual person who was referenced or thought of in any of these rules. I'm going to say that again.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that Gannon's just literally right there, and I know he's
got
gonna be
his ear
excited
to the
about
door out there right now. Go bump the door. Let's see if he's there.
I told him no. You got to stay outside.
And he's like,
he's building Legos. We all know this.
Yeah.
Yes.
cool. This has been special and opportunity for us to work with the PDGA on getting the news out on what these proposals are. So the rules will be posted in full on Wednesday. So depending on when you're listening to this, the date of posting at the PDGA is going to be the 28th, May 28th. So be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, in the meantime, you can just kind of think about what we talked about and react to those and get ready for the posting at the PDGA.
And on behalf of everybody at the PDGA, thanks for what you guys are doing and getting the word out. I know rule conversations are not exactly the most fun or the most interesting, and they can get kind of boring. And so when I reached out, Matt, and said, "Hey, we got this idea. Thanks for saying yes, and thanks for having me." So this is really cool. And happy Memorial Day, and thank you for anyone who's lost somebody. We're can't say that enough.
Yes, agreed.
Absolutely. All right. Well, without further ado, we're going to let you go, and then we're going to close out the show. We appreciate your time, Robert.
All right. Y'all have fun talking crap. Bye.
Yeah. All right. Peace.
Oh, we will.
All right. Robert Leonard. It's funny. He's like, I know it's kind of boring. And you know what, Josh? Every once in a while, we just have to do this to our listeners. There are a percentage of them I know that like this, and they would be like, let's talk more about it.
Well,
And they're happy. This is going to be one of their favorite episodes.
I think it's boring if the PDGA maybe released it like a week ago, but I think it's so awesome and intriguing that they let us break the news, and that's what I think makes it intriguing. Like, people, our fans are going to be the first ones in on the know, and they're going to want to know because no one else is going to know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or the other podcast. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you literally can, for 2 days, you have to listen to the podcast.
You got to listen to a podcast.
Get the information.
Listen or watch. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting. I think probably 3 or 4 of these, I bet, if they're approved, right? So that's the big caveat, right? But if these go through, I think there's 3 or 4 of these that I wouldn't be surprised we will see on the Pro Tour and majors next year, like in action. Right. So like there's definitely some impactful ones. I mean, these aren't revolutionary, but yeah, all the pace of play, the extensions, the way that players make determinations, and maybe even something like a provisional throw, like those things are going to show up. So they do make a difference.
And I know I'm going to see Johnny down the street start drinking an IPA during his flex. So it's going to be
definitely going to change.
Be implemented pretty quick. That one, at least.
Most likely. So thanks to Robert for coming on and talking. Obviously, he knows all the details. I'm not going to talk crap about him, but I am going to say, yeah, he knows all the details. So like, you ask one question and he will go on and tell you all the hours of debates they've had on the inside. But that's exactly what we need them to do, because
I love that he said that.
Yeah.
You need a foolproof it. I don't
need
know.
somebody to go debate
scenarios.
You need somebody to go debate the word reasonable for 6 days, just so it can be written in the
to
rules.
Cover all your bases. And then there's going to be like the deer.
You want to know what the real?
There's going to be times where it's like, and we weren't planning for this.
And you know what the hard part is, in my opinion? They're not only writing rules for the events we watch on the Disc Golf Network. Like, they have to think very, very large. And so there's a lot of things we skimmed over here today too, right? So if you're really the person, go read it all, because like, I'm gonna just read these different kinds.
I'm gonna read one-liners, and they can just listen and get excited about them or not. Clarified when scorecards are to be submitted. Defined what constitute cash equivalent for AM prizes. Allowed tobacco bans at lower tier events if pre-announced. Detailed disqualification consequences, meaning no prizes, no refund. Defined verbal DNF notification process when the TD isn't on site. And then there's clerical updates as well.
Yeah, or like a clarification of when to start the time for a lost disc.
Yeah.
That's always a fun
courtesy warnings carry into playoffs. That one's actually important and defined better now. Caddy bibs are required. Are now required. Anyways, all those and more. This is pretty cool. I agree, Ben. Pretty neat that they did that for us. We appreciate that they reached out for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Once again, we hope you enjoyed the Kona Pitch Day Open. We sure did. And we'll check back in with our Pop Drop Lock results and I think our next picks, if that's accurate. Is that accurate? Let's see when the next event is. Based off of a week out.
Yeah, while you look that up, again, when this show lives, Matt, I assume it will be published as a premiere.
Sometime on Monday. I'm going to ask and get defining on when we can release it. I'd like to obviously be up there with the first, so I think we'll try to release it earlier than usual.
Yeah, but my point is so if you're watching this during the premiere, still get in the live chat because there's a good chance we'll jump in the live chat.
Yes,
I mean, I can't
at least
guarantee
Josh
it, but
will.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I'm coaching soccer games and having a cookout and remembering those from Memorial Day.
This is disadvantage for all of our listeners, but for us, we're going to have to make our picks prior to the event next or this week. For people listening, it's this week. By the 29th. May 29th is when the Disc Golf Pro Tour Plus event, Northwest Disc Golf Championship, takes place. So we're not even previewing it for you because we're more than a week out from that with this recording.
Paige Pierce will be a good FPO pick. Yeah. There's my hint.
But make sure you get your picks in for that event. You have a couple days if you're listening on Monday. You don't have a couple days if you're listening on Wednesday. So depending on where you are, make sure you get in your picks. You don't want to miss out on that. And I think we've made it to the end of the show. It's kind of weird to be doing this middle of the week for us. Again, you feel it and you're hearing it on Monday. We appreciate so much that you guys tune in all the time. And I always say this, and I sincerely mean it. Thank you. We like to talk about disc golf, but we hope you enjoy it, and that's our purpose. And so when you let us know, we appreciate that a lot. So. Yes. Ben, you're making me thirsty with that Izzy earlier. I gotta go get one.
Yeah, sponsor us, Izzy, please.
Have we reached out? Maybe you should reach out. And see
hey, don't forget, Matt, like Titan Disc Golf.
I know. I almost cut off the interview like a few times, and I was like, we got to talk about Titan. So because this was a different process of show for us, not the usual, call it a bonus episode in ways. TitanDiscGolf.com. I'm going to assume they still have a few of those Easter egg discs. And by Easter, I mean go find Staggered Stance logo. We had a listener send us an image this week saying they found one. We know they're out there. And if you purchase that, you get that plus the value and more to buy whatever disc you want. So it's a buy one, get one free. Free shipping over $75. Exclusive stamps. Over 35,000 discs. You always see their logo on our show all the time. Josh is wearing the hat. I wear it all the time. We love their plastic. We love the discs that they have. Go shop there at TitanDiscGolf.com. Cool. All right, guys. Maybe Nick will join us in a few weeks. You know, you never know.
Yeah.
Until next time, everybody. We'll catch you out there. Peace out, everybody.